This would be Wednesday, April 10th, beginning of The Outsiders Part 2. And so we've gone through, I think I had another picture there too. We did Paul Newman, where it starts off yesterday with him talking about wanting to be like Paul Newman because he's all cool and tough. Did the members of the gang and how cool they are. Who gets out of the Corvair?
The jumpers.
That's for the Socias. They jump in when they get out.
Yep.
Who wears Madras?
The Socias.
That's the Socias again, the jumpers. They come out. He mentions the fact of how they smell the English leather and the tobacco, and that's the outfit they're wearing.
Isn't the jumper, like, have you seen the movie where he, like, jumps through time and stuff?
And then we have the two groups where you have the greasers, and then you have the Socias, and this gives you an idea what the greasers look like with the black leather jackets and looking all tough. The Socias and all their preppiness and their Soci little dogs. Let's see, then we have the different people there. We've not gotten the hubcaps yet, so we're going to get to that here in just a moment.
Well, that's what you have.
Why didn't you put John Travolta up for the greasers?
So we left off on page 8. Let's see, we are about partway down. We just got done talking about the soda. He looked at me more closely. I looked away hurriedly because, if you want to know the truth, I was starting to bawl. I knew I was as white as I felt, and I was shaking like a leaf. Soda just put his hand on my shoulder. Easy, pony boy. I ain't gonna hurt you no more. I know, I said. But the ground began to blur, and I felt hot tears running down my cheeks. I brushed them away impatiently. I'm just a little spooked, that's all. I drew a quivering breath and quit crying. You just don't cry in front of Derry. Not unless you're hurt like Johnny had been that day we found him in the vacant lot. Compared to Johnny, I wasn't hurt at all. Soda rubbed my hair. You're an okay kid, Pony. I had to grin at him. Soda can make you grin no matter what. I guess it's because he's always grinning so much himself. You're crazy, Soda. Out of your mind. Derry looked as if he'd like to knock our heads together. You're both nuts. Soda merely cocked one eyebrow, a trick he picked up from Two-Bit. Seems to run in the family. You guys know what it means to cock an eyebrow?
Yeah, like that.
The one eyebrow goes up. Where is it? There it is. Oh, that's the cocking eyebrow. The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, back when he was the wrestler. That used to be one of his. Yes, good job yelling out loud for your points. And so he used to have the people's eyebrow before he got ready to jump at you and throw an elbow into your brain. And so that's what it said when he was cocking an eyebrow. Derry stared at him for a second, then cracked a grin. Soda Pop isn't afraid of him like everyone else and enjoys teasing him. I'd just as soon tease a full-grown grizzly, but for some reason, Derry seems to like being teased by Soda. Our gang had chased the Socias to their car and heaved rocks at him. They came running toward us now. 4 lean, hard guys. They were all as tough as nails and looked it. I'd grown up with them and they accepted me, even though I was younger because I was Derry and Soda's kid brother, and I kept my mouth shut good. Steve Randall was 17. Tall and lean, with thick, greasy hair he kept combed in complicated swirls. He was cocky, smart, and Soda's best buddy since grade school. Steve's specialty was cars. He could lift a hubcap quicker and more quietly than anyone in the neighborhood, but he also knew cars upside down and backward, and he could drive anything on wheels. He and Soda worked at the same gas station. Steve part-time and Soda full-time. And their station got more customers than any other in town. Whether that was because Steve was so good with cars or because Soda attracted girls like honey draws flies, I couldn't tell you. I liked Steve only because he was Soda's best friend. He didn't like me. He thought I was a tag-along and a kid. Soda always took me with them when they went places, if they were taking girls. If they weren't taking girls. And that bugged Steve. It wasn't my fault. Soda always asked me. I didn't ask him. Soda doesn't think I'm a kid. When he mentions the lifting hubcaps, the hubcaps are not as popular as they are today. They were the things that go on the wheels of the car. That's why I got the one down here where you have the hubcap that looks like that. This one, plastic, was found on this amazing place called the side of the road. But at one time, they were metal and worth a lot of money. And what you would do is, if you were a common criminal, you would go up to a car that you saw sitting in a parking lot or in a driveway, and you would use a big screwdriver or something, and you would pry them off the wheels. And you'd take all 4 of them, but they'd be metal. Ka-dunk, ka-dunk, ka-dunk. And then you would take those and sell them to someone else. Like, hey, and you'd have your jacket with little hubcaps in it. We're changing. You'd open it like, hey, would you like to buy some hubcaps? And be like, yeah. And they'd buy the hubcaps from it, and you'd make money. Nowadays, it does you no good because most hubcaps are plastic, and you can buy them for $10 from Walmart. So if you go and steal a hubcap, like, no, I'm not going to buy that hubcap. That'd be ridiculous. But at one time, that was how you would make money, and apparently he's really good at it. I mean, as far as being a criminal goes. Maddox.
When is this place?
50s and the 60s, way back. That's when the time of the greasers was. So around that time.
In Greece?
Grease.
The movie? Like
Set-
in that time?
Set during the same time, 50s and 60s. Two-Bit Matthews was the oldest of the gang and the wisecracker of the bunch. He was about 6 feet tall, stocky in build, and very proud of his long, rusty-colored sideburns. He had gray eyes and a wide grin. He couldn't stop making funny remarks to save his life. You couldn't shut up that guy. He always had to get his 2 bits worth in, hence his name. Even his teachers forgot his real name was Keith, and we hardly remembered he had one. Life was one big joke to 2-Bit. He was famous for shoplifting and his black-handled switchblade, which he couldn't have acquired without his first talent. And he was always smarting off to the cops. He really couldn't help it. Everything he said was so irresistibly funny that he just had to let the police in on it to brighten up their dull lives. That's the way he explained it to me. He liked fights, blondes, and for some unfathomable reason, school. He was still a junior at 18 and a half, and he never learned anything. He just went for kicks. I liked him real well because he kept us laughing at ourselves, as well as at other things. He reminded me of Will Rogers. Maybe it was the grin. And Will Rogers is this guy, was an old cowboy comedian from the time period who was known for just making people laugh nonstop. Yeah.
Isn't 18 and a half a normal age for a junior? Or 18?
For a junior, you should be about 16.
17.
Sometimes
Well, my sister's
17, right
16
around.
and she's a freshman and she just turned 15.
Okay.
So she,
Go for it. Just telling you said what was the normal age.
well,
If I had to pick the real character of the gang, it'd be Dallas Winston. Dally. I used to like to draw his picture when he was in a dangerous mood, for then I could get his personality down in a few lines. He had an elfish face with high cheekbones and a pointed chin, small, sharp animal teeth, and ears like a lynx. His hair was almost white, it was so blonde, and he didn't like haircuts or hair oil either. So it fell over his forehead in wisps and kicked out in the back in tufts and curled behind his ears and along the nape of his neck. His eyes were blue, blazing ice, cold with the hatred of the whole world. Dally had spent 3 years on the wild side of New York and been arrested at the age of 10. He was tougher than the rest of us. Tougher, colder, meaner. The shade of difference that separates a greaser from a hood wasn't present in Dally. He was as wild as the boys in the downtown outfits, like Tim Shepard's gang. In New York, Dally blew off steam in gang fights. But here, organized gangs are rarities. They're just small bunches of friends who stick together. And the warfare is between the social classes. A rumble, when it's called, is usually born of a grudge fight. And the opponents just happen to bring their friends along. Oh, there are a few named gangs around, like the River Kings and the Tiber Street Tigers. But here in the Southwest, there's no gang rivalry. So Dally, even though he could get into a good fight sometimes, had no specific thing to hate. No rival gang. Only socias. And you can't win against them no matter how hard you try, because they've got all the breaks. And even whipping them isn't going to change that fact. Maybe that was why Dallas was so bitter. He had quite a reputation. They have a file on him down at the police station. He'd been arrested, he got drunk, he rode in rodeos, lied, cheated, stole, rolled drunks, jumped small kids. He did everything. I didn't like him, but he was smart, and you had to respect him. 2 things with Dally they mentioned them doing there. 1, they say he does like to jump people. Specifically, who does he jump? Little kids. So it tells you what kind of person he is, that he likes to go out with his friends and get together and go jump small children and beat them up to their old quivering piles of mush, because he's just that kind of guy. When they talk about him rolling a drunk is when you rob somebody, but you don't go out and take a gun and rob them. You go and either go down to the alleys or bars where people are getting really drunk, and you wait till they pass out and hit the ground. Once they're passed out laying on the ground, you walk up to them, roll them over, and take their money. And that's how he goes around robbing people. He'll go to parties at the school, and they have like the big parties. And they throw them, he waits till the kids get drunk, and they pass out. And he goes over, and they're passed out, rolls them over, and takes their money. That's what kind of person Dally is. He's a nice guy. Johnny Cade was last and least. If you can picture a little dark puppy that's been kicked too many times and is lost in a crowd of strangers, you'll have Johnny. He was the youngest, next to me, smaller than the rest, with a slight build. He had big black eyes and a dark tan face. His hair was jet black and heavily greased and combed to the side, but it was so long that it fell in shaggy bangs across his forehead. He had a nervous, suspicious look in his eyes, and that beating he got from the socials didn't help matters. He was the gang's pet, everyone's kid brother. His father was always beating him up, and his mother ignored him, except when she was hacked off at something. And then you could hear her yelling at him clear down at our house. I think he hated that worse than getting whipped. He would have run away 1,000,000 times if we hadn't been there. If it hadn't been for the gang, Johnny would never have known what love and affection are. One thing, with Johnny's family, the abuse is pretty bad. They're going to talk about coming up that his father beats him with a 2x4. You know what a 2x4 is?
Golf club.
Yeah. It's something like that, where you have a big old block of wood. That's what his father uses to beat him. Isn't that child abuse? Yes. Horribly. But the kid has lots of issues. That only being one of them. The fact that they verbally abuse him, physically abuse him, is just a bad home life. Which is why he says he doesn't like his family. I wiped my eyes hurriedly. Did you catch him? No, they got away this time. The dirty... Two-Bit went on cheerfully, calling the socials every name he could think of or make up. Kids okay? I'm okay. I tried to think of something to say. I'm usually pretty quiet around people, even the gang. I changed the subject. I didn't know you were out of the cooler yet, Dally. Good behavior. Got off early. You guys know what the cooler is?
Jail.
Yeah, jail. He was in jail. What for? We don't know yet. Dallas lit a cigarette and handed it to Johnny. Everyone sat down to have a smoke and relax. A smoke always lessens the tension. I'd quit trembling and my color was back. The cigarette was calming me down. Two-Bit cocked an eyebrow. Nice looking bruise you got there, kid. I touched my cheek gingerly. Really? Two-Bit nodded sagely. It's a nice cut, too. Makes you look tough. Now, tough and tough are two different words. Tough is the same as rough. Tough means cool, sharp, like a tough-looking Mustang or a tough record. In our neighborhood, both are compliments. Steve flicked his ashes at me. What were you doing walking by your lonesome? Leave it to good old Steve to bring up something like that. I was coming home from the movies. I didn't think... You don't ever think, Derry broke in. Not at home or anywhere when it counts. You must think at school with all those good grades you bring home, and you've always got your nose in a book, but do you ever use your head for common sense? No siree, bub. If you did have to go by yourself, you should have carried a blade. I just stared at the hole in the toe of my tennis shoe. Me and Derry just didn't dig each other. I never could please him. If he would have hollered at me for carrying a blade if I had carried one. If I brought home B's, he wanted A's. If I got A's, he wanted to make sure they stayed A's. If I was playing football, I should be in studying. If I was reading, I should be out playing football. He never hollered at Soda Pop. Not even when Soda dropped out of school or got tickets for speeding. He just hollered at me. Soda was glaring at him. Leave my kid brother alone, you hear? It ain't his fault he likes to go to the movies. It ain't his fault the socials like to jump us. And if he had been carrying a blade, it would have been a good excuse to cut him to ribbons. Soda always takes up for me. Derry said impatiently, when I want my kid brother to tell me what to do with my other kid brother, I'll ask you, kid brother. But he laid off me. He always does when Soda Pop tells him to. Most of the time. Next time, get any one of us to go with you, Pony Boy, Two-Bit said. Any of us will. Speaking of movies, Dal yawned, flipping away his cigarette butt. I'm walking over to the Nightly Double tomorrow night. Anybody want to come and hunt some action? Steve shook his head. Me and Soda are picking up Evie and Sandy for the game. He didn't need to look at me the way he did right then. I wasn't going to ask if I could come. I'd never tell Soda because he really likes Steve a lot. Sometimes I can't stand Steve Randall. I mean it. Sometimes I hate him. Derry sighed, just like I knew he would. Derry never had time to do anything anymore. I'm working tomorrow night. Dally looked at the rest of us. How about y'all? Two-bit. Johnny Cake, you and Pony want to come? Well, me and Johnny will come, I said. I knew Johnny wouldn't open his mouth unless he was forced to. Okay, Derry? Yeah, since the school night. Derry was real good about letting me go places on the weekends. On school nights, I could hardly leave the house. I was planning on getting boozed up tomorrow night, Two-Bit said. If I don't, I'll walk over and find y'all. Steve was looking at Dowley's hand. His ring, which he'd rolled a drunk senior to get, was back on his finger. You break up with Sylvia again? Yeah, this time it's for good. That little broad was two-timing me again while I was in jail. I thought of Sylvia and Evie and Sandy and Two-Bit's mini blondes. They were the only kind of girls that would look at us, I thought. Tough, loud girls who wore too much eye makeup and giggled and swore too much. I liked Soda's girl Sandy just fine, though. Her hair was natural blonde. Her laugh was soft like her china blue eyes. She didn't have a real good home or anything and was our kind, greaser. She was a real nice girl. Still, lots of times I wondered what other girls were like. The girls who were bright-eyed, had their dresses a decent length, and acted as if they'd like to spit on us if given a chance. Some were afraid of us, and remembering Dallas Winston, I didn't blame them. But most of them looked at us like we were dirt, gave us the same kind of look that the Socias did when they came by in their Mustangs, Corvairs, and yelled, "Grease!" at us. I wondered about them, the girls I mean. Did they cry when their boys were arrested, like Evie did when Steve got hauled in, or they run out on them the way Sylvia did Dallas? But maybe their boys didn't get arrested, or beaten up, or busted up in rodeos. I was still thinking about it while I was doing my homework that night. I had to read Great Expectations for English, and that kid, Pitt, he reminded me of us. The way he felt marked lousy because he wasn't a gentleman or anything, and the way that girl kept looking down on him. Well, that happened to me once. One time in biology, I had to dissect a worm, and the razor wouldn't cut, so I used my switchblade. The minute I flicked it out, I forgot what I was doing, or I would never have done it. This girl right beside me kind of gasped and said, "They are right. You are a hood." That didn't make me feel so hot. There were a lot of Socias in that class, and I get put into A classes because I'm supposed to be smart, A meaning advanced. But most of them thought it was pretty funny. I didn't, though. She was a cute girl. She looked real good in yellow. We deserved a lot of our trouble, I thought. Dallas deserves everything he gets, and should get worse if you want the truth. In Two-Bit, he doesn't really want or need half the things he swipes from stores. He just thinks it's fun to swipe everything that isn't nailed down. And I can understand why Soda Pop and Steve get into drag races and fights so much, though. Both of them have too much energy, too much feeling, no way to blow it off. "Rub harder, Soda," I heard Derry mumbling. "You're going to put me to sleep." I looked through the door. Soda Pop was giving Derry a back rub. Derry's always pulling muscles. He roofs houses, and he's always trying to carry 2 bundles of roofing up the ladder. I knew Soda would put him to sleep, because Soda can put about anyone out when he sets his head to it. He thought Derry worked too hard anyway. I did too. Derry didn't deserve to work like an old man when he was only 20. He'd been a real popular guy in school. He was captain of the football team. He'd been voted Boy of the Year. Oh, we just didn't have the money for him to go to college, even with the athletic scholarship he won. And now he didn't have time between jobs to even think about college, so he never went anywhere. He never did anything anymore, except work out at gyms and go skiing with some old friends of his sometimes. And I rubbed my cheek where it turned purple. I looked in the mirror. It did make me look tough, but Derry made me put a Band-Aid on the cut. I remembered how awful Johnny had looked when he got beaten up. I had just as much right to use the streets as the Socias did. And Johnny never hurt them. Why did the Socias hate us so much? We left them alone. I nearly went to sleep over my homework trying to figure it out. Soda Pop, who jumped into bed by this time, yelled sleepily for me to turn off the light and get to bed. When I finished the chapter I was on, I did. Lying beside Soda, staring at the wall, I kept remembering the faces of the Socias as they surrounded me, that blue Madras shirt the blonde was wearing, and I could still hear a thick voice. "Need a haircut, greaser?" I shivered. "You cold, Pony Boy?" "A little," I lied. Soda threw one arm across my neck, mumbled something drowsily. "Listen, kiddo, when Derry hollers at you, he don't mean nothing. He's just got more worries than somebody his age ought to. Don't take him serious. You dig, Pony? Don't let him bug you. He's really proud of you because you're so brainy. It's just because you're the baby. I mean, he loves you a lot. Savvy? Means, do you understand? Sure. Said, trying for soda's sake to get the sarcasm out of my voice. Soda? Yeah. How come you dropped out? Because I'm going to have to stop reading. Okay. And that's where we'll stop. We'll pick up from that point tomorrow. I'm going to have you take your books over and put them small number on top, big number on bottom. Don't stand up yet, my silly little chillins. We're going to do 21 through 26.
Why are you doing this to me?
Because I'm a horrible person.
Man, you said it wrong. It's 21 through 25.
Nope.